You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here where we go beyond our traditional stomping grounds of your Apple and Tesla and VIX and SPY options, look a little bit farther afield and see what's going on in the world of ETH and Bitcoin. Who knows? Maybe we'll sprinkle in some Doge and Shiba and Litecoin and everything else. Solana, who knows? It's going to make it on the show. That's why you got to tune in every week. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting, at least we tend to think so, Options Insider Radio Network. Of course, you can get this program on demand on just about any platform under the sun, your Apple Podcast, your Google Podcast, your YouTube, Audible, you name it. It's on just about every on-demand platform under the sun. So if you want to get it there, of course, you are welcome. If you enjoy it there, keep rating and reviewing so all the new folks can continue to discover it. And there are quite a few new folks entering the market just about every day. Of course, you want to go above and beyond. Join us on our exclusive shows throughout the week as well as live on the show. Then, of course, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. And, of course, keep those questions and comments coming. We do love to hear from all of you folks out there. Let's see who we're hearing from on the old program today. Joining me on the Crypto Rundown, Mr. John PEARLSTONE from CryptoPatterns.net. John, welcome back to the Crypto Rundown, sir. It has been too long.
It indeed has. Thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
John, it's been since February, so maybe let's start there. Just catch us up. How have things been? Obviously, a lot has happened in the world of crypto since February 1st, which I do believe was your last appearance, sir.
You are correct. Things have been great. I think you recall from our prior discussions, we're pretty broad-based in terms of the way we follow the market. So we had our share of luck with Bitcoin and ETH, but we've done far better in the altcoin universe. So maybe some of the info we'll talk about today can share some of those ideas with the traders that listen.
All right, then let's get to it. It is time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down all the action in the world's leading digital asset, which is, of course, Bitcoin. And coming into showtime, we've had a little bit of run out there. Not a huge move, but a decent one nonetheless out there. Got to some new high levels, almost 69,000, just a tick under it, listeners. So you're threatening 70K, back when we were mocking, not that long ago, it seems like now, back when we were mocking those 30,000 calls from January expiration back a while ago on the show. We thought that was an insane level. Now here we are threatening the 70,000 level this week, 68,954. That was last Wednesday, I should say, on the 10th. And then, of course, we saw the low, about 62,000 and change, 62,300 on last Friday. So about 6,500, close to it, points out there in terms of range on the week. So a decently active week, all things considered. But John, as I mentioned, it's been a while since you joined us on the show. In fact, the last time you joined us back on February 1st, Bitcoin was around 30,000, 33,000, I believe was the level. Of course, since then, it had the run up to north of 60,000, and then the equally infamous sell-off back to about 30,000 again, and now rallying up to almost 70,000. So again, a lot has transpired. Catch us up. Take us back. What's been going on? What's been lighting up your tape in Bitcoin? Of course, this week, but also in this massive surge and then sell off and then surge again in Bitcoin, sir.
Right. All right. Try to give you some bottom line stuff. We talked before February, and our philosophy was you can buy Bitcoin at 3,000 or 30,000. And that proved to be a pretty accurate assessment, because once 30,000 got broken, it went back up and down, but ultimately that was a powerful launching pad to get it up to where it is now. So I think the takeaway I'd want people who are getting into this market or who want to use patterns and charts is the fundamental patterns and technical analysis actually has been pretty useful, but there is a ton of manipulation, ups, downs, the volatility's off the charts. So you've just got to have a lot more commitment, which may affect your position sizing. I would also say we're getting late in the cycle. So, it's not as easy to come to you and say, oh, we'll buy it at 7,000 or 70,000. I wouldn't make that representation in this show. I think the other element that has come up, and I every time we've been together, I've shared this view, is the rest of the market is starting to matter. And while we have not seen a market where Bitcoin goes down and other things go significantly up, which is probably my number one takeaway for today, because that's what we're watching for, is when there's some divergence in the market direction. You've certainly seen much bigger gains in large cap altcoins than either Bitcoin or ETH on this cycle. So I think that's really worthy of note, is that the institutions are showing up. The retail traders are starting to learn altcoins. It's becoming a real market, is the bottom line.
Yeah, I know in the past, on previous appearances, you would say pretty much Bitcoin leads the dance, and that was the most important one to watch, and the rest of them were kind of just followed Bitcoin's lead, right? It sounds like now you're changing that tune a little bit. The altcoin market, especially the top 10, seems like it's more worth your time, John?
Right. There are some trusts that are being put together, and like I said, I like to leave your listeners with a clear message, and to me, a clear message is we're watching for Bitcoin down, altcoins up. Haven't seen it. So I ever been following it since 2016, never seen it. Maybe for, a short stretch after a big gain in Bitcoin, but never as a trend or a cycle. So I think that's the divergence that would show who the real winners may be long term. And Bitcoin may very well be one of them. But I just feel like that's going to happen at some point. It certainly happened in the prior internet cycles, during the NASDAQ tech rallies. So kind of thing we're looking for.
Of course, since we chatted last, there's been a watershed development in the Bitcoin world, which is, of course, the launch of the ProShares ETF on the Bitcoin futures. We've seen others follow suit. We saw the Valkyrie ETF launched much less fanfare a few days later. Now we have the Van Eck ETF coming hot on its heels. So I'm curious, John, what are your thoughts on these ETFs? I know you like to watch the futures as well. They're an interesting instrument for you guys to keep track of. And do you think they've had any overall impact on the technicals yet?
And look who got first crack at the ETF, So I think it's important, but as I said, the market's broadening so quickly that, I think keeping your eye on that as an indicator of market strength and depth is really valuable. That's as far as I'll go with that right now.
Yeah, they are certainly a lot of depth on those markets there. They listed options on that ETF. Probably the fastest I've ever seen a new option listed out there. So that says something in and of itself of just how much importance the industry put behind the launch of this new product, and the numbers are backing it up. Very active new listing out there. Speaking of options and all that fun stuff, let's get into all the volatility. Remember, all the analytics, volatility, SKEW, everything else coming at you, courtesy of our friends over there at Genesis Volatility. gvol.io is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. And coming into showtime, we're seeing Bitcoin vol trending a little bit lower, not a ton, but a little bit lower. It was about an 80% on our last show. Coming into this show, about a 78%. Something to keep in mind for all of you out there voting in our poll right now. Just something to keep in mind as you're comparing and contrasting out there. I'll get to the results of that and what you think a little bit later in the crypto questions segment. And BitVol, of course, our friend Simon Ho's proprietary product, kind of his version, his flavor of a Bitcoin VIX. It was at a 90.5 on our last show, now about a 90. So coming in a little bit as well, tracking the overall at the money vol level out there. SKEW, again, not a huge move in SKEW since our last show either. It was about a little bit north of a +1 on our last show. This show is closing in on a -1, about -0.9 or so. So bit of a swing, but nothing enormous out there. And we did see a bit of an evolution, though, in Simon's other product, which is the BitSKEW, which he announced on this program a few weeks back. It was at about an 85 3/4 on our last show. This show about an 80 3/4. So coming in about 5 points. Why is that noteworthy? Well, if you look at the chart of that product, you'll see the SKEW has ranged for the better part of the last year between a 77 and about a 95. So it's really been an almost 20-point range, just about it, on the BitSKEW. So we're starting to get to the lower portion of that range out there, threatening that 77 level. What does that mean? Are we poised for a bounce? It's certainly something to keep an eye on as you're watching the indicators out there. In terms of paper, how much volume is up there? How much OI is on the tape right now? Well, coming into showtime, again, this is all over there on Deribit, which remains the big dog, which also remains inaccessible for a lot of you. I get it, but this is still the big dog out there. So the open interest still pretty much 2-1, a little more than 2-1 calls over puts. 134,000 contracts open on the call side. It's up about 3,000 from this time last week, and the puts are up to about 62,300 open. That's up about almost 3,000, about 2,500 from this time last week. And in terms of where you folks are lining up from an expiration perspective right now, it's been pretty much December leading the dance across the board in most of the products these days, and that remains the case in Bitcoin options on Deribit right now. 94,000 contracts open in December. It's up about 5,300 from this time last week. In November, number 2 with 41,000, a distant number 2. That's up about 4,000. And March bringing up the rear of about 21,000. It's up about 1,200 from this time last week. John, any of that coming as a surprise or making you scratch your chin so far? Vol kind of unched, SKEW kind of unched, and the OI pretty much calls still leading the dance over puts by a sizable margin, sir.
No, it seems really consistent with the long-term trends, and there's just a lot of consolidation going on. I mean, pattern's pretty obvious. They'll spike it, then they'll grind it around back down to where they spiked it. And the options seem to be supporting exactly that.
And when you're crunching the numbers for the support and resistance and everything else, does the options OI, does that factor in at all? Is that one of the indicators you use, sir?
I do look for some of those things because there's certain times when it hits levels that they say that's a trend reversal, but it's not our primary indicator, no.
So everyone out there is always asking us about how the OI should play into your technicals. There you go. John uses it, but it's not a huge driver out there. Let's look at some of the notional value of that open interest, how much value of options contracts are open right now out there. And that's pretty much unched from this time last week as well. Last week was about 12 billion open on Deribit, about 13 if you add in all the other venues. And that's pretty much the same this week. 12 billion over there on Deribit and about 13 million, or I should say billion, open on the rest of the venues if you add them all together. What's the leading venue after Deribit? Well, it's LedgerX getting some decent paper out there, about 426 million worth of notional OI open there. Then you got CME number 2, 323 million. And you got OKEX and Bit.com both hanging out at about 300 million each, a little bit shy of that. So you're a little bit north of 13, talk about 13.25 if you add in those other pretty much 5 venues onto the list. In terms of how much volume was going up, how much notional volume was trading every day this past week, actually a pretty active week, as you recall, from this summer. Kind of light from a volume perspective. We saw many days, 100+ million worth of volume going up. Not a lot. This past week, multiple days. Looks like there were 3 days over 1 billion worth of notional volume, which is a lot. The most active day was actually our last show day last Monday with about 1.6 billion hitting the tape. Then we had 2 days, the 10th and the 12th, with about 1.2 billion. So 3 days over a billion. That's a pretty active week out there these days. And in terms of where you folks are lining up, where are the size positions open right now in Bitcoin options? Let's find out. Let's see if there's been a big evolution since last week. And spoiler alert, there has not been. Let's start from the bottom this time. That's pretty much the lone change out there. We have the 200K strike. That one pretty active there with about 8,200 contracts, up about 700. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's, again, not a lot of change this week. Number 4, we have the 120,000 strike. That's about 10,000 contracts open. That's unched from this time last week. Not a big change there. Number 3, the 80,000 strike has about 12,000 contracts open. That's up about 1,000. Number 2, the 70,000 strike. That has about 13,000 contracts open. That's pretty much unchanged from this time last week. And number 1 remains the par strike, a.k.a. the 100,000 strike, with about 15,000 contracts open. That's up about 1,000 from this time last week. So not a huge change out there. John, we mentioned before the ProShares ETF driving a lot of action in the futures. I know in the past you've mentioned you like to watch the futures. They're an interesting baseline for your technicals. Does that remain the case? And what are your thoughts about what you're seeing out there in the CME futures these days?
Yeah, I mean, still completely respect it. It looks kind of like what I just reviewed, which is we feel like they determine the strongest support and resistance numbers for futures because they usually are the leader. Everything in our indicators say that we're still in a bullish trend and just consolidating and should see more upside here at some point. Doesn't mean there won't be pullbacks, but they're not full corrections. That's kind of what the volume versus price analysis tells us.
Let's get out to some of those options and the futures out there, see what they're doing. Options on the CME, a little bit more active this week than last week, not a ton. They're up about 100 contracts from an OI perspective. So threatening 1,000, it was about 900 last week. Remember, we saw that big resurgence in CME volume after the launch of the ProShares. It has kind of calmed down a little bit. We'll see if the new Van Eck product will turn it up to 11 again. Futures-wise, same deal. The OI is up slightly, up to about 13,500. It's up about 200 contracts in this time last week. And in terms of the last trading day on Friday, we saw about 9,000 contracts going up. So we know the futures can do a lot more, and it did a lot more in the immediate wake of the launch of the ETF. So taking a bit of a break, we'll see, again, if these new ETFs can drive some more paper. Same deal for the micro Bitcoin futures, which is the product most of you will probably be trading if you're going over there. We saw on the last trading day about 30,000 contracts going up, and the OI has ticked back up. Remember that OI fell off a cliff recently after expiration after the ProShares ETF launched. Climbing back up now. It's up about 5,700 contracts to about 27,500 or so out there. So that has climbed quite a bit over the course of the past week. As we keep on rolling, John alluded to it at the top of the show. It sounds like he's pretty much an altcoin guy now. So let's find out what's going on out there. It is time to explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's dive into the exploding world of altcoin. Let's see what's lighting it up. Let's start, as we are wont to do, breaking down the top 10. Actually, I take it back. Once again, our producers have doffed their caps to the legion of you out there who are holding on Shiba because they extended the top 10 to an 11. Guess what's number 11 again this week, listeners? Yup, it is Shiba Inu coin. Holding firm right around 30 billion, a little bit shy of 30 billion, about 29.75 billion worth of market cap. Number 10 right above it. It's fitting that these two should be near each other. It's Doge at about 34 billion. So Doge and Shiba holding down the bottom portion of our top 10. You're talking about almost 65 billion worth of market cap between just those two. Intriguing times that we all live in, listeners. Number 9, we got USD coin at about 34.3 billion. Number 8, Polkadot, 44, almost 45 billion. Number 7, our old friend XRP at about 55.8 billion. Number 6, it's Cardano at 67.6 billion. Number 5, it's Solana. This thing, it's up again, it's down again. Solana's kind of just been on the rampage of late, holding firm at number 6 this week number 5, at right around 240, coming to 239, at least when we ran these market cap numbers. That puts it at about $72.5 billion. Number 4, it's Tether, $73.8 billion. Number 3, Binance Coin, a little bit north of $100 billion, about $106 billion. You know, number 2 and number 1 are. Number 2 is ETH, $542 billion. So everyone was looking at when will Bitcoin hit the 1T level. A little bit closer this week than we were in the past. So intriguing. We're seeing ETH continuing to flirt with or hit new all-time highs week after week, and that remains the case again this week. Number 1, of course, Bitcoin at about 1.2T out there. Let's get to the number 2 dog. Then we'll get some of the other altcoin in a minute, John, because I know you probably have something to share. I know you're huge on Shiba. We'll get there. But before we get there, let's start in ETH this week. We saw ETH had an interesting week, I think, to put it mildly, out there. Coming into Showtime today, we were at a little bit shy of 46. We were at about 45.93. And on our last show, we were talking about a 47.5 or so. So you're talking down about 160 handles from this time last week. Had a nice range, though. Had a range of about 44.76 and a high of about nearly 48.70. And all that coming pretty much in the same day, last Wednesday, the 10th. So an intriguing day for highs and lows, pretty much all in the same day. Usually we don't see that. Usually we see the highs and the lows of the week spread out more throughout the week. But last week, ETH was bouncing around. So all of you out there who are leaning on the 5,000 strike, that's been a pretty popular strike for a while. Got close to it this week. We're threatening it out there. Before I keep going on ETH, John, I know ETH's been a big product for you guys to watch and analyze. I know a lot of you users are big ETH fans out there. What are your thoughts on the movements we've seen out there in ETH this week? And indeed, like I said, you haven't been on since February. We've seen enormous movements in ETH since that time as well. So what are your thoughts on the evolution we've seen in ETH since that time?
Well, 2 parts. From a fundamental technical analysis standpoint, ETH had a target between 4,000 and 5,000 a while ago. And so we were in it up close to that range. We started scaling out at that point. We have a little bit left. And when I say we, I'm just saying we try to show model portfolios to the various people we're helping. This staking, which I don't know what you guys talk about on the show, but they've got people locking up, a lot of ETH to build their new ETH2 platform for multiple years with big promises of big returns on it. It just seems a bit dangerous. I've just always had issues because ETH never has produced the functionality. We talk about that every time I'm on, is what's real and what's not in the crypto market. So it's got a huge following. It's got a lot of great potential, but a lot of hurdles still to clear. So we don't want to be heavily weighted in it. I think it'll hit 5,000 at some point. Seems to be traveling with Bitcoin, if you see what I'm saying. You compare their charts. There's not a ton of difference. And I would absolutely bet that if Bitcoin, decides to go into correction mode, ETH will be right there along with it. So what we've been doing is looking for use cases that have any progressions that show real progress. So, our personal favorite is Polkadot. The Kusama network, which is like a startup network for Polkadot, is functional. It's got people using it. It's got real use cases. It's been working for months. Polkadot's just starting to roll out the same process they tested at Kusama. So there's something real in crypto. Now, Solana's been ridiculous, as you said, and they've got a lot of promise, but not as much actual functionality. And then 12 and 13, ironically, that you didn't show, Terra, which is LUNA, and Avalanche, which is AVAX, have huge institutional support and $100 million funds each just for startups and the development. So there's some big money players coming after Ethereum, and they're making progress. It really all depends on how the early part of next year goes with ETH's next steps to prove that they can actually become a functional platform.
That does seem to be the race in the altcoin sector right now, outside of the, shall we say, more absurd ones like your Shibas and your Doge. The rest of the big altcoin
I guess I'm not coming on anymore. Shiba's the big boy. I follow it, but I don't buy it.
Are you saying you're not seeing any good technicals in Shiba right now, sir?
Well, I own Doge when it spiked, but nowhere near where it went to. I wasn't that crazy. So no.
Yeah, but you're right. It does seem like all these other altcoin out there, they all are racing to unseat ETH in some capacity, right? You got Polkadot, you got Solana. By the way, the Solana explosion was just insane. Was that something you guys were tracking as it made this incredible move over the last few months?
At portions, it just got so parabolic. There's no way we could, continue to project that kind of what it did. That's what happens in crypto sometimes. But no, only a small portion. I'll admit we didn't catch most of that move.
Yeah, but it does seem like a lot of the assets right now in the altcoin universe are definitely trying to find out what the next ETH is, and there are legion of platforms and projects trying to be just that, claiming to be faster or have less energy hit, or maybe all of the above out there, and hence we've seen these massive moves and these other ones, as you mentioned. And we have talked about Polkadot a few times on the show. It's always there somewhere in our top 10 usually, but it hasn't been a big focus for us of late. You saying that's a big focus for you guys right now, John? Is that because the users are demanding, or are you just seeing interesting setups out there in Polkadot right now?
Both. I'm trying to find the number of KSM just so you can have your listeners start to follow that, because it's a sister network and it kind of gives you a feel for, it's been a good predictor for Polkadot. And in any event, Polkadot has a lot going on. They're doing auctions right now to start people using their what are called parachains. And it's really, the bottom line is it's like 6 months or a year ahead of anything that ETH is even projecting it might do. So you may start to see more about real use cases during early 2022 with Polkadot.
Interesting. So it sounds like you're drinking the Polkadot Kool-Aid, sir. I like it. We're getting into usually.
I am. I admit it. I am.
That's what we like about this segment, is because every altcoin we talk about, they have their adherents, they have their pros and their cons out there, and people are always going to come on the show and they're going to be super jazzed about one of them. It seems like for the lion's share of it, it has been ETH, but these days, you're right, a lot of other ones are moving onto the radar. People are excited about their prospects to perhaps usurp ETH. So it'll be interesting to see. Either way, they're climbing quite a bit. Let's get into the big dog there of ETH, and then we'll move beyond a little bit in some other altcoin. Again, all these analysts coming at you courtesy of our friends over there at Genesis Volatility. An interesting week, like we said, vol-wise, we saw a similar pattern play out in ETH that we saw in Bitcoin this past week. Coming in slightly, the vol was 94% last week on the show. This week, 93%. So pretty much a 1% move to the dark side for both of them. A SKEW last show was a positive 7. This week it has mitigated somewhat. It's back down to about a positive 4. Still strongly positive, but coming in a bit from that lofty 7 level. In terms of OI, it's similar story to ETH options that it is to Bitcoin, by which I mean it's pretty much all calls all the time. There's still over 1 million calls open in ETH right now, 1.04 million to be precise. That's down a little bit. It's down about 5,000, but not a huge change from last week. Puts, not even half of that, 436,000 open up there. That's up about 14,000. So we did see a little bit of increase on the puts net week on week, but not a huge change. They're still not even half of what the calls are. So I think it's going to take another big sell-off like we saw maybe earlier this year to get that put OI back up in both Bitcoin and in ETH. Right now, they're both less than 2-to-1 out there. In terms of the notional value of that OI actually has ticked up a little bit. It was about 6 billion last week. This week, about 7 billion over there on ETH. So a little bit of an uptick, which is interesting. A little bit more contracts trading, given the fact that ETH did tick down over the course of this past week. Speaking of that volume, what do we see? We saw a pretty steady, pretty robust week, all things considered. No 1 billion days, but a lot of just heavy action. Like on our last show day, 640 million worth of notional going up on Deribit on the 10th, 540 million on the 12th, 745 million today so far already, 610 million on the tape coming into showtime. So a steady and heavy week, even if no single day really blew the doors off out there. And coming into where you folks are lining up from an options positioning perspective, let's start on an expiration perspective. It is still December. That's still leading the dance. 577,000 contracts open. It's up about 6,000 from this time last week, followed by a pretty distant number 2 in March at 322,000, even though that's up about 32,000. So March gained some steam over the course of the past week. And November coming on strong as well. 237,000 contracts open. It's up about 22,000 from this time last week. Obviously, not enough time for this really to catch December. It may catch March before November rolls off the board, but probably a little bit of a bridge too far to try to catch December. In terms of the OI, where are you folks lining up? What are the size options positions open right now in ETH option? Let's start at the bottom again of our top 5. Number 5 is the 7,000 strike with about 56,000 contracts. Opens up about 2,000 from this time last week. Number 4, the 6,000 strike with 81,000 contracts open. It's up about 6,000 from this time last week. That's our biggest gainer of the week out there. Number 3, the 15,000 strike. That has about 96,000 contracts, opens up about 3,000 from this time last week. Number 2, the 10K strike, getting a bit of a theme here, listeners. 95,000 contracts open. It's up about 2,000 from this time last week. And the number 1, the big dog, remains the 5K strike that has 106,000 contracts. Opens up slightly, up about 1,000 contracts from this time last week. So it still remains the 5,000 strike in the top spot, followed by the 10K strike, and then the 15,000 strike. So if you want to express some optimism in all things ETH, then the upside call options are sitting there waiting for you. And there's a lot of paper open there, so you can join the party. In terms of the futures over there on CME, didn't really see a huge evolution. Saw the OI up about 200 contracts, up to about 5,300 from this time last week. Maybe some people are holding off, waiting for the launch of the micro ETH futures before they really dive in. Okay, let's keep on rolling here. You mentioned some of the other altcoin, John. Let's get into some of those right now. We've got Ripple here, good old XRP at about 119 coming into showtime. That's off from the 125 level it was, about 6 cents from this time last week. Everyone's favorite or least favorite, that's Doge. Was a little bit shy of 26 cents today. It was a little bit north of 28 cents on the last show. So you're off a little more than 2 cents since our last show. Litecoin having a nice run this week. It was 226 on our last show. Coming into today's show, it was almost 265. It puts it up about 37, almost 38 handles from where it was this time last week. Some of the other ones John mentioned, you folks like to watch. Good old Cardano at 203 this week, 209 last week. So gave up about 6 cents on the week. Polkadot, John's new favorite, was at about a 45.66 on our last show, 53.5 about coming into today's show. So flip that around. Today it was 45.66. Last week was 53.5. So giving up nearly $8, about $7.80 on the course of the last week. And Solana, this thing just moves all over the place. Actually only moving $7 this week. That's actually kind of quiet for it. It was 246.5 on our last show, and coming into today's show was about 239.5. And you can't forget your old friend Shiba Inu, which looks like pretty much unched since our show last week. Mr. John, you mentioned Polkadot, you mentioned some of the others. Any other altcoin lighting up your tape? And did any of those analytics I broke down for ETH come as a surprise or indeed a shock to you, sir?
No, not hearing on ETH that, it's grinding right along with Bitcoin. So we're kind of assuming that's going to continue to be the case. But the other altcoins, I gotta believe you've had shows on NFTs at this point. I mean, that's the rage. And we're big fans of Engine, ENJ, which is in the top 100 somewhere. They created the platform, the original NFT platform. It started on ETH, and they're kind of breaking it off on their own. But they don't have a real accelerator yet. Some of these other tokens, there's AXS. I don't know how many people want to look into these things, but some are actually making money selling NFTs. I'm sure you've seen or heard some of these art sales and various digital asset sales that people are just paying insane amounts of money for. Well, some of these platforms are selling just unbelievable amounts of their particular token and actually generating revenue. So, real commerce has started on the blockchain. But Engine is kind of the leader. They're the most disciplined. They've got some good background and support investors. And, they're up for my last show. They're up from about 15, 20 cents to $3. So they have a good model. And I think that there's something that your listeners should take a look at.
So what I hear, John, if I'm reading between the lines correctly, is it sounds like you're diving into this constitutional NFT sale that's going up soon.
I don't know, look at all of it. I think it's the upside of NFTs or everything they're saying they are. Right now, some of the things that money's being spent on is insane. It is, I'm sure it is to you. But the use cases of NFTs where you can have absolute trustless guarantees that the assets are what they say they are. I mean, that's revolutionary. Think about it for real estate, banking, or various collectibles where now you can essentially serialize and lock in the exact thing that you're saying. It just changes all the verification methods that are going on right now. I don't know how many years it'll take, but it is going to change a lot of things that are happening in the marketplace.
I have some questions for you. It sounds like our listeners do too. So let's keep on rolling then And let's dive into the crypto question segment.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crypto question segment. John, it's a good thing you're on the show today because you're the ideal person to answer this first question. This comes in from Charles. He's asking a question we've received a lot. We've talked about it actually a lot on the show, but it's been a while. He wants to know, I've heard that technicals tend to work better in crypto than in stocks. Is that the case, and why? John, like I said, you're our resident technician. Is Charles correct? Do you think they work better in crypto than in stocks? And he wants to know, if so, why, sir?
I would say that's a tough question to give a straight answer, but I'll try. I would say that they do not, simply because you don't have underlying fundamentals in most cases, like the actual sales and cash flow and the things that people look at in business. So they know, they being the people with the big money manipulating all these things, they know what the support and resistance levels are too. So the answer on the surface is no, but longer term, they are playing out in line with like long range Elliott wave and pattern targets. And what you have to look at is how you might trade futures, where technical analysts build in buffers to say we're willing to let things go outside the support levels and outside the resistance levels because we know that they're just cleaning out stops or whatever, and they'll come back. If you look at a Bitcoin chart, you'll see a lot of examples of that. So the takeaway is smaller position size, you can play technical, do really well because you can live with some variation.
Interesting. I would have thought you would have been on the opposite side of that for the reason you mentioned, that there aren't the other competing methods of analysis. There's really no fundamentals. There's really no revenue or anything else you can really crunch on most of these crypto assets. It's pretty much all technicals. So in some ways, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it sounds like you're saying that's not the case, John.
No, and I said it's a tricky answer because part of the answer is yes, as long as you have the right time frame and you're willing to expand some of these fundamental guidelines that people always follow, like where you set your stops and stuff like that.
And what about some of these smaller altcoins you're mentioning right now, like, some of these NFT names and others that are smaller, that are less liquid? Do you see any better or worse performance with technicals with those versus some of the larger, more liquid, let's say the ETHs and the Bitcoins of the world?
Well, you could make all the money you wanted earlier this year if you just trade on volume. That's an indicator, right? I mean, the volume was telling you what was going to happen. They would spike it, then they drag it back down on low volume, and then boom, take it to levels you couldn't even imagine. I think Solana's chart might be a good one to take a look at to see an example of that. But other than that, the game's open now. Everybody knows what's going on. The institutions are, I look for big volume spikes on mid and large cap coins because that may be where institutions are shifting to. And, they're all trying to get in and make their returns, and we're getting towards year end, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, I'm not giving you the kind of answer I think you want, but I do think there's some value in the smaller coins, but I wouldn't be using a lot of pattern analysis because, like I said, they can move the entire market in a single day easily, as a small institutional investor can. So I would look at volume first and foremost.
So pretty much you see a big spike in the volume, buy it. That's the down and dirty.
Be patient. In other words, wait for the pullback, and then yes, if you like the story, if you like the other fundamentals you follow, then yes. And I use the wrong word. I should say other indicators you follow. We know there are no real fundamentals here.
I was going to say fundamentals. Where are you finding the fundamentals? I like it. All right. We got more here. Let's go to this is more of, I guess, of a suggestion, but he has a question, I guess, in it too. This comes from, Alth8. He says, you guys should launch some sort of insider token. I think it would be a cool way to connect with your audience. What do you guys think? Well, you're not the first person to suggest something like that there, Mr. or Mrs. Alth8. It is something we've joked about here before on the network, but only kind of joked. I mean, it's something that could actually tangibly come to fruition if enough people seem to be interested in it, and sounds like a certain number of people certainly are. So it is something we have floated. What form would it take? Where would we list it? What type of token would it be? These are all the things to be worked out. But it is, I will admit, it is an intriguing idea, one I don't scoff at as much as I used to out there, and certainly one that could be interesting. What do you think, John? Are you looking forward to crunching the numbers and the technicals on our forthcoming Options Insider token, sir?
I see more potential for you minting your own NFTs, which you could do today. There are multiple sites that let you just go do, Options Insider NFT and maybe the first episode or some key trade that you called, and then that could actually trade on the open market. People could trade that as essentially a collectible.
That's another thing people have suggested. We should put out shows or segments or tidbits as NFTs, and that is again something else we've considered. We got a lot of irons in the fire, John. So you're more pro the Options Insider NFT marketplace versus a Options Insider coin, sir.
I have to understand the use case a little better on the Insider coin. I'm not sure where that's going.
Yeah, you and me both. We need to learn more about it. But the inquiries are there. It certainly is intriguing. I'll just leave it at that for now, Mr. or Mrs. Althate. But thank you for the suggestion and, of course, for tuning in. All right, that music means we come to the end of another fun journey through the world of crypto. A lot lighting it up out there, not just the big dogs of your Bitcoins and your ETHs, but a lot of other altcoin on the docket. Hope you enjoyed it. And John, before we go, if you want to leave our audience with any other, you already left them with some great altcoin to keep an eye on, but if you have any other nuggets you want to leave with them, hints or teases, now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
I do, and what a day to be on this show, because it's just amazing the way things played out. Check out, because it's a way for people who like the stock market to play crypto without getting too heavy into crypto, and that's the Bitcoin and various altcoin miners. Many of them trade publicly, New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ. So I'll give you a couple tickers to check out, and the one in particular is MARA, Marathon Digital Holdings. We've been in there for a long time, so when you look at it today and see it's down 24% and say, what the hell is this guy recommending this for? You'll understand. They have a great story. They own a ton of Bitcoin. So why are they plummeting while Bitcoin's very stable or even going up? I'll let your listeners figure that one out. But the bottom line is that's a really good one, an RIOT. Those are the two leaders. But if nothing else, it's a way to follow crypto without having to get on Coinbase or figure out all kinds of new things. These things they have blown Bitcoin away over the last month or two until today. But we're heavy in it. We like them and think they're definitely worth watching. There's options on many of them as well.
Interesting. Yeah, we have talked about the Marathon and Riot many times in the past. They haven't been on our radar that much of late, but you're right. Mara certainly selling off today. I didn't realize you went beyond the actual crypto to actually the equities as well, but sounds like you're dabbling in a lot of things over there these days, John.
I had plenty of GameStop way back when too. I did okay.
There you go. Getting into
these things happen.
The early areas, the early trends of the meme train. Well, John, if listeners are intrigued by everything you were laying down today, they want to contact you guys or check out what you guys have to offer. Where should they go? What should they do?
I would say at this point, we're doing a lot more kind of private institutional advising. We do have the newsletter, but just write us at CryptoPatterns@gmail.com. And that's the best way to find out what you're looking for and how we can help you. CryptoPatterns@gmail.com.
There you go. So if you have a question about all things technicals over there in Bitcoin or the altcoin or even in related names like Mara and Riot, hit them up over there, CryptoPatterns@gmail.com. And of course, you want to check out all these analytics for yourselves in a lot more detail. gvol.io is the place to go. And we got to go on out of here. We'll be back again tomorrow. Speaking of crypto, got our frequent offender on this program, Mr. Bill himself, joining us tomorrow. Of course, a long-term, many decades market maker there on the floor, the CBOE and risk manager. So he, of course, will be there to answer all of your various options, position, and risk management questions. But on top of that, it's deep into crypto these days. So you can also talk about the intersection of those two asset classes and how you may want to apply that options trading mindset and skill set to the world of crypto right now. So a lot to unpack with him. That'll be coming up tomorrow, of course. Then Education Wednesday, back on Thursday, double dose of the option block, and indeed TWIFO, Friday Vol Views and Options Oddities, and back again next Monday, another episode of the Crypto Rundown. We'll see you then.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL. home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.